In this video we're going to look at the MyQueryTutor server. So we go to MyQueryTutor.com and up in the corner here we'll click on the login button. Now before we get to this point, you would have already applied to have a school account, and through your email address you would have gone through the process of setting up a password. So at this point we'll enter that email address and password now. Once you've entered the email and password, click login. Okay, so this is our classroom dashboard. We can have multiple classrooms, so this can be a school-wide tool where you may have 6 or 7 different classes across different year levels, and you can create an individual class for each. Now for this example I've got some dummy data. I've only got 7 students enrolled. So let's have a click on this button and click show. And you can see for this classroom we've got a classroom code, and this is what we will give to our students to put into the MyQueryTutor desktop application so that they can sync to the server. And from this classroom dashboard, if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see some graphs here that make analyzing your student progress really simple. So here along the bottom we have each student, and if you have 30 students then these columns will be a bit thinner, probably about a quarter of the size, and you'll have a scroll bar up here so you can scroll through them all. So at a glance I can see that this account here has passed 57 of the questions. This account here has only passed 4, has attempted 2 but failed, and has 51 questions still that they have not attempted. And so I can go through, and just by mousing over I can see instantly the progress of each student. If I click on this questions tab, then I get it from the point of view of the questions. So these are the questions that are in MyQueryTutor. And again I've got the scroll bar down here, so I can scroll across and have a look at any particular question. And with a rollover I can see that 4 students have passed, 2 have attempted but failed, and 1 has not attempted it at all. So I get this instant data feedback. I can go up to look at individual students. So I'll have a look at one of these students here. Let's have a look at Bob the Builder. Click show. You can see here that Bob's passed these 2 questions here. So in the topic of aggregates, the question most populated, this is the query that he wrote and passed that particular test. If we go down here in aggregates, lowest invoice price, this is the query attempted and it has not passed. So if you want to help a student with a question that they're unable to answer and you're working remotely, you can just log into here, find out what query that they've actually written, and then you can give them some hints and correct them to get the appropriate query to pass. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the server side. If I just go back a few times, you'll notice here, one thing I didn't mention before is you can just add new classes. So you can add as many classes as you want for your account. So now let's have a look at the MyQueryTutor client. When you first start up, after you've installed MyQueryTutor, when you first run it, it'll go through a first run wizard. So we'll just click through this, and the student will put in their details. So I'll just put in my details. Okay, when my details are in, I'll click next. Now at this point I could put in the server details. So why am I having to put in the server details myself? So the reason for this is because we've made MyQueryTutor, both the client and the server, open source. So if you want to run the server yourself in your own school, then you can do so, and at this point you can just direct it to your own personal server. So for this we're going to use the MyQueryTutor server. So we'll say myquerytutor.com. We need to put in the class key, which is this code right here. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it into this box here. And you can see up here it's HTTPS, so it's a secure server. I'll click that box there, which means it'll run over port 443 rather than over port 80. And if I click next, it's then set those details. For this demonstration, I'm actually going to leave these blank to show you that you don't actually need the server to run MyQueryTutor. That hasn't changed. So let's go into MyQueryTutor now. We don't have the server set up at this point, and as usual we can go through and use it. So if I click on a question, I can scroll down, I can read it, I can put in my query. So let's run that query. Okay, we can see that that's passed. We've got all the usual functionality. We can check to see what the result should have been if we wanted to know and we weren't getting it right. We can look at the ERD that's associated with that question, and we can look at the topic lesson. If we didn't know how to use select, well then we can go through the lesson that's built in. Okay, if I go down here and show progress, you'll see that I've completed one question and I haven't attempted any of the others. So I'll just go into another question and I'll put in something that's not going to work. Select name from places, and that's a query that won't work. Okay, no such table. It's told me that this is where I should look for my error. And if I now look at show progress, you can see that I've got one successful, one attempted but not successful, and a whole lot not yet attempted. Alright, but this is the important part down here. When somebody's working at home, how can you track how they're going? Well, they can work offline, so if they have poor internet connection or no internet connection for periods of time, they can continue to work. That won't stop them. When they're ready, when they do have an internet connection, they can say sync with the server, and you should be encouraging your students to sync at least once a day, unless you're just going to check once a week, in which case they can work away and just sync once a week whenever they have the time. Click on that sync. Now, because I didn't put the details in during that setup, I have the opportunity to put them in now. Okay, and once they're in, I click OK. And you can see it's still red, which means the sync hasn't happened, so I'll click it again. And now it's green. So that tells me that I'm now synced with the server. So if I click show progress, you can see I'd actually completed all these questions before. Because I've got this one wrong, it's my latest one, it remains wrong. Okay, so it takes whatever your most recent query is. But you can see I'd already completed all these questions. And I can check that by clicking on any other question, and you'll see that the query is already down there. If I go in and click on one of these, you can see the query's there. I run the query, you can see it's successful. So what this allows as well is for students to work across multiple machines. So they could use, if they've got a one-to-one laptop, they could do it on there, but then when they're working at home, they can put it on their own machine, install MyQueryTutor, put in the server details, hit sync, and they're up to wherever they were before. So this is also good if for whatever reason their machine gets corrupt, has to be re-imaged, whatever goes wrong, they're not going to lose their work. And at the same time, we can go in and we can have a look at all the progress of the students and where they're at. So if I now go click on Stephen Tucker, you can see now that that second question is not passed, and that's the query that I put in. Okay, so that's the basic functionality. There's lots of more improvements that we plan to put in, but to get it up and running for now, this is what we have, and I think that alone provides a lot for teachers as far as formative feedback, as far as keeping track of the progress of your students, where they're at, what they've done,